Let's do it. Let's rock.
Kyle Conrad, episode number 30. What's up, man?
What's going on?
Dude, I got a list of questions.
You just want to bullshit instead?
No, I'm going to ask you the questions. I mean, yeah, and it potentially couldn't go there. But I'm going to ask you a few of these questions and we can see where it goes. Or I can ask them all. There's a lot. But
let's roll.
First one is, Kyle, why'd you start doing this podcast?
Why did we start doing it, or why do I think I do it now?
Why did you start doing it? Why do you do it now?
Okay. Why? So I'm trying to think back to like why I started doing it.
Yeah, I mean, you could answer it but I'm sure even in our heads, we both have different ideas.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, why did you, in your mind, start doing it?
You hear that?
I don't hear anything.
I got a slight buzz.
That better? Oh, I just heard that, but that was outside the equipment.
It's better. Yeah, that's cool. The buzz is basically gone. Okay. I'm probably a bunch of different reasons. I would say a combination between boredom and interest. So like, I would say when we started this, I was kind of bored in some ways. And so I was like, oh, that's interesting. Let's try that. So that's probably where, like a fundamental, like baseline, that's kind of where it started. I think intuitively I knew that this would help me get over some of my fears about talking on camera, listening to my own voice. And I think it would, I kind of thought that it would help me clarify my mind, because I would listen to myself and go, huh, that's kind of weird. Like, why'd I say that? Or I don't remember saying that. Like, there's been a few times where I'm like, I don't remember even saying those things or even having that conversation. So that's been interesting. So I think that's why I started.
So from then, how much has that evolved? Why are you still doing it now, and how much has that changed? And how much of that has been the case? Has that kind of been what's happened?
Well, I would say if I could be much more intentional about going back and like listening to some of the podcasts, because I really haven't almost at all. There's been a couple that I've listened to and or that maybe there's like 10 or 15 minute sections, and that's out of like a 2-hour podcast. I'll listen to like 10 or 15 minutes, and sometimes they're not even I'm just kind of skipping through. So I probably should go back and listen to some of them, because I would learn a lot about myself. Because every time I do listen to one, I learn more about myself. What was the question again?
Well, has that been the case? I mean, because you essentially said that you wanted to get over any reservations you had about speaking on camera, and you wanted to get some clarity in the way you think. And essentially, has that been the case? Has that happened? And has the reason you started doing it evolved? Or as the reason you're doing it now, is that still the same reason, or has it evolved? Is it a very different reason?
Yeah, I think it's evolved. Those reasons still exist. I think it has helped me become more aware. And partly more aware in a kind of a daunting way, that I don't really like the way I sound. And now that I'm very aware of it, and I don't really like the way that sometimes I present myself. And so now I'm even more aware of it. So it's almost like I thought I was here, and I've actually realized I'm here. And so that's a little scary that I have a bigger gap of like my presentation skills or my public speaking skills, or just the way that I come off in the world. And I think that's probably been maybe it's been a theme throughout my life of that. Like I feel like I'm slightly misunderstood, and that has to do with the way I present myself and the information that comes out of my mouth. And so as I currently think about that, that's something that I want to change and adapt, because you don't want to be misunderstood. I don't want to be misunderstood. I want to communicate clearly with people. And when I say people, I mean like friends, family, like the coworkers, like people that you're actually close with or that you are in communication with regularly.
You're making me think. I'm going to try to say this phrase right now, and I don't know if it's going to come
You're
out.
gonna come up with some cool ass fucking quote right now?
I just don't know if it's going to come out right, but you're basically making me think the way you perceive yourself is subjective to your perspective of yourself.
Yeah.
And that perspective changes so much when you have essentially a chance to listen to yourself recorded and to listen to yourself from a different point of view or a different perspective. I was just like clenching all the muscles in my leg trying to get all those words out.
So, yeah, I mean, I can't remember the exact. It doesn't really matter because it's probably happened. We've had 30 podcasts. So let's just say it's happened 30 times. And it could be like a 10-second clip in each one of those episodes, but it could be like a social issue or a political issue or a current event topic. And I've noticed the few times that I've gone back and listened to our podcast that what I'm saying, what I say and how it comes off is different than what I mean. And so then I'm miscommunicating. And so that's been a little daunting because I didn't quite realize that I was miscommunicating that much. Because if I go back and listen to it and I'm the person that said it and I'm like, that doesn't sound like what I meant. Or I actually used the wrong word. And then I notice it afterwards and I go back and listen to it. I'm like, oh, that's actually the wrong word. And then you go, I wonder how people are perceiving that if I use the wrong word.
Yeah, I think I've talked to you about this, and it's kind of the most humbling and annoying thing because I've realized that my business or any business can be kind of a reflection of yourself. And I realized that I just kind of assume everybody, like what you're saying is you just assume the way you're articulating something or the way you understand something in your head that you're articulating it in a way that everyone will understand that.
Yeah, it's like you make an assumption that everybody understands exactly what you're talking about.
And if you really can't be really efficient at articulating that, you don't even know. You just assume I mean, I can only speak for myself, but there's this assumption, people know what I mean. People know what my business stands for. They know who I am. They know my values and morals, but they have no idea. And naturally, why would they? I've never expressed them or attempted to. And yeah, that becomes very apparent when you kind of hear yourself talk and you're like, wait, that I didn't say anything. Everything I'm saying is full of assumptions. I'm assuming everybody knows me. They know where I came from. They know who I am.
They've had the same experiences.
Yeah, and they have no idea. And unless you're really well spoken, really articulate, you have a very dense vocabulary. Yeah, I feel you. So I get what you're saying.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess the way that you get that way, the way that you get, you become very well spoken and articulate is that you do it. Right now, you can have some natural ability, but just like anything, I think like you can have some natural ability to play a sport, but if you don't play it a lot, you're not going to be very good. Right? No matter how talented you are naturally, you're still going to have to practice and all that stuff. And so, I would say like speaking, writing, these are things that are currently on my mind. Learning to public speak, I guess, whether it's public or even just like out in the world. But speaking, writing, storytelling are things that are on my mind that I'm like, I really need to improve these things. And I think they would greatly benefit my life.
So to kind of circle back to the question, have you realized this more since we started this, that these are things you want to improve or things that
I think I have intuitively known that I have it's something that I need to work on, want to work on. And I would say I got away with not doing those things. Mostly because of my line of work. And I would, I guess, overcompensate, or I could say, hey, look, like I'm just going to focus on these other things and I'll be really, really, really good at them. And I don't have to learn how to write a persuasive document or give a persuasive presentation. My like tangible work, in a sense, will speak for itself. And I think I'm at a point in my professional career where that actually doesn't work. Like I can't really do any more like tangible work out in the field to improve my career.
Yeah, it's kind of capped you in a sense. That's what you're saying.
Yeah, like if I were to stay in the corporate world, it's like it's completely capped me. I shouldn't say completely. It's something that like I would need to work on.
So maybe do you think almost intuitively or unconsciously part of you started doing this because you had some sort of intuitive feeling that this could help sort of segue or improve some of those skills needed to get in that direction you want to go?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's like been a major factor, but yeah, it's been in the back of my mind.
I mean, that it's funny because that kind of like you essentially answered the next two questions that I had, which was, what have you learned from this podcast? Like, but I mean, you're saying what you've learned from yourself. What have you learned outside of what you've learned about yourself? What have you learned about other people from this podcast? Good, bad, or indifferent.
Some observations I've had is that some of the people we've interviewed, struggle with the exact same things that I do. And so it's interesting, like when you ask somebody a question and then they answer it in a certain way, and you're like, huh, I wonder why they think that, and like, do they have where are they at in life, like at that particular moment. So I think that's been an interesting observation. I think that people I would say that what's been really interesting is every person has a really interesting story. And most people's stories are never heard and they're never talked about. They're not written down. And you know, you can just like pass most people over and like not really pay attention to them. But inside of that person, or if you were to spend an hour and a half or 2 hours with them and you just focus on them, you find out that everybody's really, really interesting. So that's been really cool, actually. I think about some of the people we've interviewed and I'm like, dude, I'm so glad we talked to them. We just like learn like little tiny nuggets about completely random topics that you'll remember.
Yeah.
That you're like, oh, like Sokal, Ukraine, from Greg,
Yep.
And so like there's just like little things that you're like, oh, that's cool. So I would say that's been something I've learned, is that very ordinary people have a very interesting story. And they're not that ordinary.
Yeah, for sure. What say in the next 30 episodes, what direction do you hope it goes? What do you hope to improve about yourself? What kind of people do you hope to interview?
I mean, this has been pretty fluid, right? Like the whole thing has just been, we're just going to do it and see what happens. So I don't have a thought for a direction. I hope that we become a little more polished every time, so just like a tiny bit more polished, just based on like what other things we have going on. It's kind of, unless we were to like take this and become like a really main focus of our lives, it's kind of like inherently on the back burner a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Like, and so if it's going to stay there, then we're going to see like really small increments of change, which is fine. But I want to make sure that there's small improvements as we go. I don't know what we're going to learn. I don't know who we're going to interview. We have no idea who we're going to interview. I just think there's like these like layers of becoming comfortable, or kind of getting over the discomfort of like asking random people or somewhat random people to come on the show.
I don't know about you, but when we started doing this, there's enough element of nerve in just doing it with anyone we asked, be it my mother, my brother. Kind of just because we have no idea what we're doing. It's clunky. It's awkward.
Mm-hmm.
What the hell are we doing? And that was before we even published any.
Mm-hmm.
Now I guess if there's 30 episodes, there's probably anywhere from 60 to 90 recorded hours that's published. So, but I don't know now. At least speaking for myself, there's a new comfort zone that's been established because we've gotten comfortable doing the things that were uncomfortable for the first however many episodes.
Yeah. So I think we're going to get to a point where it's approaching people to being on the show is going to be really normal. And it's going to be like, cool. Like let's ask anybody.
Yeah.
And that's not going to happen over time. I mean, it might happen. It's probably going to happen actually really quickly, quicker than we think. But, it'll be interesting, right? Because at some point we're just going to be like, dude, I don't care who it is.
I don't know why I just thought this, but if you think about it, that could be the for some people, just depending on what their daily life is like, depending on what kind of routine they're in, it might be really out of the ordinary and interesting for somebody to call them up or approach them and ask them to be on a podcast.
Yeah, and I was thinking about that the other day of like, what's the right way to approach somebody that you don't know, right? But you are familiar with, right? So like, there's somebody in town that runs a business, and we call them up and say, "Hey, I want to be on our podcast. We want to learn about yourself and how you started your business, whatever." They might say no because they're uncomfortable being on camera.
Yeah.
They might say no for all kinds of reasons. And we couldn't possibly know why they would say no, right? Is it because we're not qualified enough? And they're like, dude, I'm not going on that stupid show. There's all these assumptions that we can make, right? But none of that actually matters. We just have to ask, right? And then we'll ask some other people, and we're going to ask 10 people that we don't know, and we're going to get one or two responses that say yes.
The really funny thing is, I'm thinking of when I'm thinking of this is approaching girls.
Mm-hmm.
You have no idea. You're so uncomfortable. You don't know how to do it. And it feels clunky and awkward. How do I just straight cold approach this gal? Ask her for a number, X, Y, and it'll be similar in that sense. But if you set out and we're like, I'm going to do this till I get good at it, you'd eventually get so good at it and get so much confidence that realistically more girls would start approaching you because you'd kind of have that.
Mm-hmm.
You'd be more sought out.
I don't know. It's never happened. I've never gained that amount of confidence.
Good enough.
Yeah, but it's interesting. I just had a thought that I do think is true. I'm not putting it in practice at the moment, but like, I would say that because of this podcast, which has nothing to do with, meeting women, right? I would say that if I were single right now, that I would be much more comfortable today than I was a year ago of just approaching women that I don't know.
Yeah.
Which is like kind of interesting. Of like, we started a podcast and now I'm more confident to approach women. They're not related, but they kind of are.
Yeah. Well, I think we've laughed about this because we've had a few experiences when we were hanging out and talking to people in public that we realized we've almost slipped into our podcast mode.
Oh yeah.
But
yeah.
I think you get a lot better, or at least it feels like a lot better asking questions just to people you don't know, and just to spur a conversation. And then next thing you know, you're in a 20-30 minute conversation and you're learning all kinds of stuff about this person. They're excited because nobody's asked them these kinds of questions, so they haven't been able to tell anyone kind of what's been going on in their head and in their life. And then next thing, that just feels normal, and it's a weird skill that you just pick up from doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't there's obviously miles to go, but anyway.
Yeah.
I feel the same as well. It's just much easier for me to talk to anyone. And I'll kind of laugh after or during and realize, oh, I'm doing that thing. I'm asking these questions. Where are you from? And it can be the simplest questions, and it sounds stupid. Like, yeah, that seems so obvious. But until you do it enough to get relatively good at it, it just doesn't make any sense. Saying people's name to them, like the really simple things.
Saying their name back to them.
Yeah. I don't know. What else do I got on here? Oh, Kyle. This one will shift a little bit. Do you think everyone has a calling or a purpose in life? And do you think you found yours?
Mm.
It was calling and or purpose, however you want to phrase that.
But I guess the best that I can see is that your purpose and your calling changes in life. It changes with like what you're kind of where you're at in life. And so there's, maybe chunks and segments of like what's important to you, what inspires you, what gets you up in the morning and that you're excited about, or keeps you up at night, right? And you'll work until 12 or 1, 2 in the morning doing whatever it is. And so there, I guess, different times in my life where I had a purpose or a calling. Like I can think back to when it was sports and it was soccer, and that's all I cared about and that's all I paid attention to. So then I was younger, and then that's what that was. And then when I first got out of college, it was work. And so I was super inspired for many, many years to do what I was doing for work. So I think it changes for people. Maybe when you become a parent, it's your kids for a while, but maybe I would imagine that rubs off after, not like completely, but it can shift. I don't know. I'm not a parent, but so I think, your calling, your purpose can change and adapt. I don't think that people have one. Maybe they do, but I don't think they have one in like throughout their whole life. And then you ask me what's mine.
Yeah, or do you think you found yours? And that's like, I mean, I guess because you just kind of said you don't think it's singular, so you're kind of.
Yeah, so I think I showed you this chart that I started to make. Remember this?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I've been working on it. And it's like a hierarchy chart. And I've just kind of work on it maybe like, in all reality, maybe like 30 minutes a week. It's like 5 minutes here and 5 minutes there. So I was thinking about this. I was like, what would be at the top of this hierarchy? Like, what is my purpose? And trying to put something that's general enough that like it can stay for a long time, but then adding detail. So like what I did was, that you haven't seen, is I had like my purpose here, and then there's me. So I'm actually below my purpose. My purpose is above me.
Okay.
My purpose is more important than myself. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And then it's myself, and then it would be like my partner, right? Let's just say future wife. And then it would be like immediate family. And so like there's like this hierarchy of importance and of value. And so anyway, above me would be my purpose. And then I was like, oh fuck, dude, what's that? Like, and I think what it is optimism. Like staying optimistic and staying interested in something, which is kind of like what I was talking about. Like, what are you inspired about right now?
Mm-hmm.
What gets you up in the morning? Like what drives you? And for me, it would be like, well, staying optimistic about something. And so I think my purpose for myself is to constantly stay optimistic. And I struggle with that. And so I think that's why it would be a good challenge of like, no matter what happens in life, like find the optimism.
I think that's probably a huge challenge too, because you could say life can be generally pessimistic.
Yeah, I'm good at that.
I mean, but if you're being honest, like life is amazing and you can do a lot of great things, but ultimately you're going to die.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone you know and love is going to die.
Mm-hmm.
That's obviously not going to be your thought all day, but that is inevitable. So to stay optimistic with that inevitable reality is a pretty big challenge. I don't think just for you.
Right. And so I would agree with that. I would also say that like there's so many positive things and things to look at to be grateful for, and I tend not to pay attention to them and not to notice them. And so that paying attention to that optimism, being grateful, that kind of all is in that category of like, what is my purpose? And my purpose in my mind is, if I can remain optimistic, my life and other people's around me, life will be a lot better. Even in times that are really shitty, it's like, wouldn't it be better to be optimistic?
This is so weird, and maybe it's like counterintuitive, or I don't know what, but in times when things have been really terrible and people have come together, it's given me so much hope and joy, because you see kind of the power of your friends and your family and what's most important to you and how much you all mean to each other. So like at loss of like a friend or a family member, there's kind of that sense of community and love just for everyone. Everyone shows up in a way they never show up in life, and everyone comes together. And I'm like, and I remember in those moments thinking, man, it sucks that this is what it takes, but sometimes this is what it takes to kind of reorientate your priorities of what matters. And you realize that, your friends and family, the people you love, are what matters way more than anything. Because if you didn't have those people in those situations, where would that go?
Yeah. And then like that relates to all this. So like one of the things I wrote off to the side of like my purpose is to maximize my full potential. And so maximizing my full potential would be to show up to the absolute best of my ability at all times. And knowing that like I'm not going to do that every time, but if I can remain optimistic, I show up at an exponentially like higher or better in a better way than I do of when I'm pessimistic or upset or depressed about the situation or whatever. So yeah, I think my purpose is to remain optimistic no matter what happens. Find the things to be grateful for.
Okay, now I'm going to elaborate on this question, and bear with me, because this question is kind of based off a theory or a like this is like Carl Jungian type question.
I've never read a single thing that Carl Jung.
Yeah, but you've heard so
I've
many,
heard his name.
You've heard so many people that study him that like this probably won't even. You might So this is sort of this was his observation, and his sort of theory is. So I said your purpose, and you kind of said your purpose is optimism. And like when people hear that question, myself included, what's my purpose? So my purpose could be to build something. I'm a carpenter. My purpose could be, if I want to have kids, then I'd say my purpose would be to be a father. And if I want to get married, my purpose would be to be a husband and a father, etc.
Mm-hmm.
And what he says, or his belief is, kind of through observation, and is that your soul, and that like that whole term can be, taken very loosely or has a lot of different meanings to people, but your soul, which is something internal to you, has something it's trying to express.
Mm-hmm.
And it needs to express that through you.
Mm-hmm.
So that he would say your soul is yearning to express itself through you. And that's, I think, where he would say that's more of a singular thing. And people might do that through their occupation. If you're some sort of artist, because, let's use Zach Bryan.
Mm-hmm.
He writes all this very beautiful, very poetic music. And the statement would be, he's got something inside of him. His soul is trying to say something.
Mm-hmm.
And it can't just speak like, hey, I'm Kyle Soul, and I'm here to let you know that XYZ, but it can sort of speak in languages of the arts,
Mm-hmm.
or of some sort of physical expression in this. And yeah, this seems like I'm getting in the weeds very much already. So to elaborate on that question, do you think that we have some sort of internal deep expression, something that we're trying to express through ourselves? Have you thought about that yourself? Do you think do you think there's any truth in that? And I don't know. It's because that's something I haven't thought about a lot, but I guess I have more that I've heard this theory articulated more, or theory, or yeah, whatever you want to call it.
I guess for me, I don't think it's been singular.
Mm-hmm.
It's been singular at times. Again, like it kind of going back to like.
Let me add this to that question too. If this maybe this will make. I don't think the way you would express it would ever be singular, but it's like, and I don't know if that you'll ever like would just put your hand on like, oh yeah, it's this obvious thing, but hey, through all these things I'm doing, there's something in me that I'm trying to get out, and like, is that yearning that we all have to like achieve and accomplish in some ways, that something we're trying to express through ourselves? And if I lost you, just let's move on. I'll go to the next question.
No, you haven't lost me. I don't know. Like, I think it's clear that people want to express things. I don't think it's clear that, well, in general, if I like generalize society, I think people are very unclear about what they want to express, but they want to express something. Not that like I'm on like some high horse and I'm like, I know what I want to express.
Hey, if you do, I mean, it's just more power to you if you do. Like, I think if you do, all you can do is be more of a benefit to everyone around you. Because I think, totally, just my opinion, I think somebody like, and I'm using Zach Bryan for the example again, his ability to express how he feels inside is a huge benefit to millions of people. We all get to experience really deep, and like, this is where I'd use the term soulful, but it's, you really feel it. You feel his music. You're like, shit, dude, why do I get goosebumps? Like, why do I feel that inside me? And you're like, oh, like that comes from within in some creepy way. And like, I don't know if that helps articulate it all, but yeah, I don't know, if you're on your high horse and you've got it figured out, like, I think that's a net benefit to you and everyone else.
Sure.
I interrupted you. What were you saying about your high horse?
I was just saying that not like I have it figured out of like, what do I want to express? So like, you don't have to know. And I think it can change. So I don't know if I answered your question.
No, you didn't.
What was the question?
Just, do you think, I mean, you kind of did. Do you think people have this, like, do you think that essentially that there is some sort of like that your soul is somehow trying to express something through you?
Yeah, I do. I do. I'm now kind of thinking about like what prevents people from doing that. I think there's kind of a lot of
like
surface level bullshit reasons why people don't. I say bullshit, but like they're real. People's day jobs, right? That like they fucking hate their mundane day jobs. Probably keep them from, quite frankly, just paying attention to their soul, paying attention to their intuition, because they're just going through the motions, right? And so like we're all at different levels of going through the motions in some ways.
Yeah, I mean, there's societal expectations we all have, and
there's expectations, but there's requirements, right? Like you have to have a place to live. You got to pay rent or pay a mortgage, or like in modern society, right? Like you could go out and live in the woods, sure, right, and like not pay rent and whatever, but there's requirements, right? And so there's minimum requirements, but then just to meet the minimum requirements doesn't give you a chance to really breathe. You have to get quite a bit above the minimum requirements to be able to get some breathing room to probably even start to think about your purpose in life.
Yeah, I mean, we're at the fact that we can sit here and have this conversation is a huge luxury that people didn't have for a long time, and some people don't have today. But you kind of, there's like two worlds you got to bridge. There's sort of reality and society where you need to exist in, and you want to, because you don't want to just go live in the woods by yourself. Maybe there's some people that really do, but most people, in my opinion, would just go crazy and be bored.
Yeah.
So you want to live in this society, but you also don't want to just get so worried about paying your mortgage and making money that you kind of lose sight of why you're doing anything.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, that whole question gets in the weeds a lot. So I just wanted to pick your brain about it. Okay, Kyle.
Right.
Okay, Kyle. Kyle, okay. This this kind of goes back to the other one. This is almost like goes back to the first one I asked you when we were talking about why'd you start doing the podcast. What do you think is the hardest thing for people to understand about you?
Bro, this is going to break the podcast. Why would you? What? Don't ask questions like this. What is the hardest thing for people to understand about me? Whoa. That's a question I've never thought about.
I can jump to the next one if you
No. It's a good one. Just bear with me here, people. Okay, so I'm kind of reframing the question the way I kind of understand it. And maybe I'm not going to answer the question properly, but I'm kind of thinking about like what prevents people from understanding me properly.
And then I would, yeah, and like almost another way you could ask that is what prevents you from articulating yourself properly so people can understand you?
That's a fucking different question, though.
Okay, so, but still.
That's a different answer, actually.
Okay, but the original question is what is the hardest thing for people to understand about you? Why they can't understand it? It's probably your fault. It's not theirs.
It's my fault, huh?
Well, you haven't articulated it or expressed it, so. There's a quote like this. It's kind of like.
I think I got it.
Okay.
I think I got it.
Okay.
So I would say that there's been a theme throughout my whole life that, and I'm generalizing, that the average person, or average is probably not a good word, but generally people don't understand the amount of drive that I have. And they have a hard time comprehending like why I'm doing something and to the extent that I do something, because they wouldn't go that far or take it that far. And so I've been misunderstood in that way. And so like that goes back to sports, people, my teammates. I always felt like I was willing to do more or accept more or less, depending on what we're talking about, than my teammates. I would work harder, longer, more hours. And that would be the same in my career. And so I think I've been misunderstood about that.
That almost makes me go back to what we were just talking about too. Is like that kind of ties into that theory. Oh,
The handle just came off.
fucking A.
Just have to hold it like that.
It like the theory is essentially if you're not sort of working in the direction of your quote unquote soul's purpose, that you won't have any of this motivation or this energy. Like this is when people will kind of out of no reason fall into a depression because they kind of know like, hey, something's not right. I'm not on the right path. I'm not headed the way I want to go. I'm forcing things. This doesn't make sense. And those are kind of clues. And a lot of people will be like, hey, how do I fix this? Why am I like, something's depressed? I must need medication. And it's like, hey, no, maybe that is possible. Like there is that's definitely possible. And I'm the last person in the world to make that decision. But a lot of times you can be doing things that are totally the opposite of everything that internally you want to express through yourself. And maybe you, like, I don't know, gave up on something you wanted to do and you just kind of said, well, I'd like to do that, but reality is I got to do all these other things. I got to get married and have kids. And, but if that's the case, I would say like that would tell me that in a lot of ways you're headed in the right direction if you've got energy to do that. Because I don't think you're going to have any energy to do something that you don't in any way believe in.
I mean, I would agree with the premise there that I would agree that, well, I think if you're if you're putting that much, the maximum amount of drive and effort into something that you don't want to do, the outcome is not going to be good.
Yeah. But people do it all the time.
Yeah. And so
But
generally, like, there can be good outcomes, right? Like there can be good outcomes washed in with negative ones. But for me, I guess in a sense I'm unrealistic in some ways, or I'm all or nothing in some ways, and that like I want to do something the way I want to do it, and the way that like feels like it has integrity, or like, want to take it to the maximum, or I don't want to do it at all. And so some people are like, well, that's not realistic. You have to kind of halfway or 3/4 of the way do it. And I understand that in some ways, but I don't like to do things like 3/4 of the way.
yeah, I mean that could just be a standard that was set that might be a standard, but it's not a standard is subjective to people who said it,
Yeah. And so I don't know why it's that way, but like it's been a theme. So I think that's in a lot of ways I'm misunderstood. Because I guess people don't have that amount of drive in some circumstances.
It's one thing that's kind of funny though. Me asking you the question and you saying that this is like at least you're in some ways expressing that like about yourself on some public to some extent publicly. Do you think there's a way? Do you have a desire to express that more vocally or publicly? Or do you not care? Do you have a hope or desire to express that? Like to articulate or express that?
I never thought about that.
Or do you kind of I don't give a shit if anyone knows why I'm so motivated, or you're kind of be like, hey, no, I have a lot of drive, and to me, it surprises me you don't feel like this.
You mean it surprises me that other people don't feel like this?
Yeah. I mean, do you just have a desire to express that, or do you not care? Could you care less if anyone knows why you do what you do, or why you have so much drive to do it?
Yeah, I don't know. I've never thought about that. I've never thought about, like, I guess, explaining myself as it relates to my drive. I mean, interesting. So like I've actually in the last handful of years, I've tried to understand, I'm going to say other people. And I've tried to understand like what motivates them and like why they do things differently than me. I'll give you an example. This is yesterday.
Okay.
I was on a conference call with like 50 people. And there was this guy's last day at work. And he went to go work for another company. And so they had like a little going away meeting, right? Virtual meeting where there's 50 people on a Zoom call.
How old is this guy roughly?
55.
Okay.
And so he's been with the company for 3 years, or he's been with the department for 3 years. Really nice guy, really smart guy, knows his stuff really well. And so I personally am not close with him at all. And so I almost didn't join the call. I was like, I don't really care that this guy's leaving the company. Like I have no personal relationship with him really. I was surprised at how many people were on the call. I was like, man, there's a lot of people here. And it went around and it was just like this. It was this like high five parade and like, let's praise this guy before he leaves and walks out the door. Right. And it was like, literally, I would say 15 people like, oh my God, you're such a great guy. I learned so much from you. It was like what I would call glad handing. You know that term?
No.
Glad handing is a term where like you're almost like fakely giving somebody praise. Like, and you're like giving them too much praise, even though you may not know them that well. And you're doing it actually for political reasons for yourself.
I see.
So you're giving somebody a compliment and you're in return actually almost getting rewarded and praised yourself. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so it's kind of fake in my mind. Now, I'm sure there were a lot of people were being authentic on the call, and I think some people were just doing what they thought was the social good thing to do. Was like, hey, we're really gonna miss you, right? And so I think like,
Kyle doesn't miss you.
No, I'm not going to. But like, are you gonna miss that person? Are you actually that close with them?
Yeah.
Right? Like, do you actually give a shit about that person? You know?
Yeah.
And so I guess how we started this was like, I would never do that. Like, I would never, like, if I'm going to praise somebody, right? I'm going to do it like a one-on-one personally. I'm not going to do it in front of a group.
Yeah.
Right? Because I think it's almost somewhat inauthentic in front of a group. And so I would never do that. And like, I literally joined the call yesterday to understand why people do what they do. Like, why would they do that? Because to me, like, I don't want to have a call like that at all. Like, when I leave a company, I don't want to have a going away call. If you want to say that, hey, Kyle, I really appreciated working with you. That was great. Then call me personally. You have my cell phone number. I don't need to have a going away party. So that's an example of something of like, I don't know how it doesn't necessarily relate to my drive, but in a sense it does, because like, I don't want to give people, and I don't think people deserve compliments for just doing their job. I think people deserve compliments for going way above and beyond. And so I've struggled with that in recent years, because at Amazon, in the last handful of years, people are being complimented way too much for doing the absolute basics. And I'm kind of like of the idea that like, if you're just doing the basics and you're getting your job done, you don't get a compliment.
I think probably a large majority of the people are doing that because they think they're supposed to, and they probably don't know any better.
Yeah, and so this goes back to my drive. And maybe this is like unhealthy, but it's just who I am. So other people need more praise, more compliments, more reassurance, more external motivation. And I don't need that, and I don't feed off it. I feed off of the exact opposite, which is like, I'm not going to tell you a single word until the job's done. Right? Until then, you definitely will not get a compliment from me.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying like in like you can't do something really good in between the job starting and job finishing, right? Or it could be in the sports season. You can have a great play, you can have a great game, and I'm going to tell you that was awesome, great job. But guess what? We got a game to play next week, right? And we like, great, game's over, we won. I expect to win. Like when I played soccer, like I expected to win every single game, and I was super fucking pissed if we didn't. And so like at work, like I expect the absolute, I guess, basics and bare minimums. Like I expect somebody to be there on time and show up, be prepared, know exactly what they're going to do that day. Get basically, if you were to stretch it out, like every single day, get what you expect to get done every single day. Of course, things come up, blah, blah, blah. But like over the course of the week, like, did you get what you needed to get done? The job's on time. It's on budget. It's organized. It's predictable. Those are bare minimum expectations. So like, you're not going to get a pat on the back just because like you're on time, you're on budget, and you're organized. Like that's normal. So anyway, that goes back to my drive of like, I've actually the last handful of years been intentional about trying to understand other people because I have felt isolated and outcasted. And I have isolated and somewhat become an outcast myself.
Just because you don't kind of align with people on so many of these things?
Yeah. And so I kind of did that to myself in some ways. But I've always kind of been that way.
That makes sense. Do you wonder why you've been that way? Do you think there's any, like, have you ever looked back and said, why the fuck am I like, why am I like this? Why am I so motivated and driven?
No, I didn't. I've been like that since I was a kid. You know, like I've I mean, there's definitely areas in my life that I'm super weak, right? And I'm like, I don't have that competitive spirit, and maybe I should, but I don't, or I haven't. You know, and so that's actually, you know, shout out to Serini Vasa Nukala. It's like one of the things that Serini and I think, if I could speak for Serini, are like really appreciated about each other, and the why we become really good friends is that like we had a topic, construction and work, that we both both kind of aligned on, is that dude's fucking relentless, and he's will not give you a 16th of an inch of space. You know, like, you know, they say like somebody won't give you an inch. Serini won't give you a 16th, you know, And him and I just like aligned on that. And so there's been people in my life that I've really, really connected with where like we see eye to eye on things like that.
Yeah, I don't know. I think like I can relate to that on Drive, and I think like I don't know. It's kind of like in some senses it's cultural upbringing, just where you were brought up and who you were brought up around. Like that, I know like sometimes that mine is out of line, and sometimes I'm like I don't care, and sometimes I'm like, all right, I got to give people the benefit of the doubt. They didn't grow up where I did, and I don't know what. Like some of it's hard to explain. I haven't put my thumb on exactly where or why it comes from, but I know that feeling when I meet somebody that has that similar drive, and I'm like, oh yeah, like this dude gets it. And what I'm saying he gets is he gets my drive.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I don't have an answer for it. So I'm asking you to answer something that I haven't figured out. But I know what you're saying when you find someone that drive aligns with.
Yeah. So, how did we get on that? Something about being like that's how I've been misunderstood. Yeah. I would say, yeah, there's been a lot of times when I've been very misunderstood, and it's been my drive.
I got a question for you.
I bet you do.
I do. What's one decision you've made in your life that you feel has had the biggest impact on where you are now? And what was the thought process behind it?
Say the question again.
What was one decision that you've made in your life that's had the biggest impact on where you are now? And what was the thought process behind it? And I don't know, like where you are now, sitting in this room doing a podcast, where you are in your career, where you are in your relationships, where you are in your finances, you can kind of pick a topic, or just generally where you are in life right now. Like let's say what got you here to Montana.
Yeah, there's a lot of different things, a lot of different ways
So,
that I could interpret that question in so many
because
different
you
ways.
could think of when did you move here?
Yeah,
Or when did you quit a job, start a job?
Yeah.
Or when did you end a relationship, start a relationship?
Mhm.
When did you decide to start a podcast and rent a studio? But anyway, just one decision that you think back on, you're like, oh yeah, that was the one. Like that totally changed the compass, the direction I was headed.
So because I just finished a book called The Power of Now, I'm going to talk about right now.
Okay. Eckerd.
Because now could be like, well, in the last year or two, right?
Yeah.
It's like, well, that's not really now. So I'm going to talk about right now.
Yeah, but I mean, yeah. Okay, yeah. But the question wasn't necessarily about right now. The question was, what's one decision you've made that's gotten you to where you are now?
Okay, yeah, and so that and it
Yeah.
that so the decision was a couple of years ago.
Okay.
But the now is right now.
Yeah.
So, it's October
12th.
of 24. Let me check something. Make sure I got my shit together.
Just kidding. It's October 13th. We stream this podcast live.
Give me a second.
Okay. Spent the last 15 minutes thinking about that question.
I
You have an answer for us?
Don't have a great answer.
Didn't you say?
There could be a bunch of different stuff that I go down, but I'll just choose this one. So about 2 years ago, I was super frustrated with work and the direction of our department. And so I intuitively knew that like something was wrong. and something was wrong and felt disingenuous to me. And so I was working really, really hard, putting a ton of effort into my work, into my team, into the people that worked for me. And I was really getting nowhere, and I wasn't getting really any benefit, and the results weren't very fruitful. And it was becoming more and more and more challenging to accomplish less and less and less. And so our team was accomplishing less and less and less. And we were working harder and harder and harder. So those like two things were going in opposite of each other. And that was because lots of bureaucracy and red tape were being introduced to our department. So things were just kind of administratively and through process and procedure getting slowed down. And so I noticed that. I paid attention to it, and I asked to change roles and tried to fix a bunch of it in my new role. That wasn't as that didn't end up being as fruitful as I wish it would have been. But I changed roles, and I knew that changing roles would also offer up a bunch of things that I had never really had in my career. So it would offer up a bunch of things in my personal life. So it would offer up free time. I would travel a lot less and be home more and in Bozeman more. And so that decision was really difficult, and that process was really difficult because I was so career driven, and I identified myself and as like this particular person that performed a certain role and kind of had a certain status within my team and within people I worked with. And so that ultimately has resulted in the life I have now, where I've been able to do all kinds of other things for my friends, my family, actually truly, kind of set roots down here in Bozeman, where before I was just always in hotels and on airplanes and airports. I didn't think I was before, like when I was working all the time and traveling all the time, I don't think I was a really good friend. I was like not really there mentally or even physically.
Mm-hmm.
I was unreliable to my friends and family. And so now I was in some ways unreliable to myself. But that has allowed me to become a good friend, more reliable, be actually there, support people, spend time with my family, be there for my mom, with what's going on with her. And then as of recently, it's been, it's afforded me the ability to do what I'm doing in my relationship.
Which almost is going to segue into one of the questions I had. How was your trip to South America?
Fucking sweet, dude.
What can you tell me about it?
Try not to use names.
Okay.
Yeah, it was awesome. We had a freaking great time. The resort that we were at, the ski resort that we were at, was super, super special. Got to meet all her, not all, but a bunch of her coworkers and
Her being your girlfriend.
yeah, got to meet a bunch of, yeah, it's probably a bad job of explaining that, but
Her.
got to meet a bunch of her coworkers and stuff. And, you know, got to see a bunch of parts of her life that I had only heard about, right?
Did you work at all?
Huh?
Did you work at all?
I worked for like a day and a half. Yeah. So the resort was really special. Santiago, Chile was like just kind of a big city. Doesn't, you know, it wasn't that special. It was cool. I'm glad I went, but like, I also wouldn't say that, I had enough time in Santiago. And then we went to El Salvador, and that was awesome. Like, so cool. She's a really good surfer. And I'm not. And so, I got lessons every day. I took like one lesson every single day, except for one day.
From her, from somebody else?
From somebody else. So like she would go surf and I would go get a lesson.
Oh, nice.
And I've surfed before, but I could only ride the white water. So it was like basically the wave crashed, and then you jump on the board, like, you know, right after the wave crash, and then you ride the white water in, which is still a lot of fun.
She can ride the waves.
She can ride the waves before they crash, right? And so, I took a lesson every day, and then like on the second day of taking a lesson, this guy like took me out in the waves, and these waves were pretty damn big. Like these are like 4, 5, 6 foot waves. Like they're big. And they're like they broke further out than what I'm used to. So like the body of water, because it's further out, is much more volume of water. Anyway, so like the second day, this guy like takes me out there, and I'm like, oh shit, like I should not be out here. And I caught a couple waves then with his assistance. Like he like pushed me off. Like, so I caught like real waves before they broke. That was freaking sick. And then, so then I just kind of kept learning for the next few days and caught a few more waves, like by myself on my own. We had a blast. We had a freaking awesome time. Surfed basically every day, except for one day. Went to a volcano one day. We ate great food, sat in the sun, drank cocktails, had, you know, it's like, sounds fucking sweet.
Sounds bitchin'.
Yeah.
Did you catch any waves with her once you got the hang of it, or no?
We did go, we surfed a few times together. I caught a few waves. You know, I think she probably caught a few on that particular session. I don't know. I'm sure she did, because she's much better than I am. I was so focused on myself that like I didn't even know if she caught any waves.
You know, she was there.
Oh shit!
That fucking thing.
I gotta get a new one or fix this one. Anyway, yeah, South America, Central America. It's awesome. Great time.
All right, what are you trying to do now? What do you want to do in the next 6 months?
Oh,
next year?
You gotta fuck with me, man.
Or just enjoy your life and keep having fun, man. Don't even think about it.
I don't have a clear direction as to like where I want to go next. And that's been bothering me. But I guess I'm becoming more accepting that it doesn't have to be clear. I should just kind of follow my intuition and it'll lead me there.
Yeah.
I have been making some strides on kind of like doing my own thing, starting my own business, and so managing construction projects on my own, and then ultimately I would like to do my own real estate development. And so, you know, build some of my own buildings, own them, and rent them out and keep them for a long time, or build them and sell them. So that's kind of what my, like, if you were to combine those two things, right? Like there's a business that runs that like is its own entity that manages construction projects.
Yep.
Right. And then there's another entity by itself that's almost a completely separate business. They can be intermixed, but like in a sense, they're two separate businesses. And the other one is like a real estate development company that builds it, owns it, and either sells it or keeps it and makes rent on it every month.
Okay. This is essentially the final question I've got. Say you do this in the next 10 years. This company's doing well. You've got X amount of employees. A lot of this is in a way automated as far as the buildings that are owned, or you've got buildings for sale. Your net worth has dramatically increased. You have so much freedom. You could work 5 hours a week. What would you do with all that free time and like a really, in a sense, disposable income?
I don't know specifically, but my goals would be to start with myself, in that, like, take really good care of myself, which sounds like what you just described, that would be happening. But like take good care of my well-being, not just financially, but like like spiritually, emotionally, all that stuff, health wise. So take good care of myself, take good care of my partner, take and like offer my partner a really, really high quality of life, and opportunities to do whatever they want to do in life. And then support, if let's say I have children at that time, which I hope I do, focus on my kids, make sure that they're living the best life that they could possibly live. They're doing as well as they could possibly do. Focus on family and friends, and then my local community. So, and in that order. So from me to my partner to my kids to immediate family, and then community.
And you can probably do pretty much most of all those things now too, right? Definitely the first ones, like take care of your.
Yeah, I think so. I think so, but I think as you add layers, and as you get more responsibility, you get to like this like plateau, right? And then you have to like climb a little more, get a little more space, right? We're talking about like that space of like you have to like have, there's like a threshold of like, okay, I can breathe. Okay, now that I can breathe, I'm going to try to like really catch my breath, and like I can get to a resting heart rate, right? And you're not like running around all the time. And so I think as you add a partner, and now it's like, okay, I have another person to like look after, right? And hopefully they look after themselves well too, but like you're going to try to help them. And so that's going to take some of your time and energy.
But hopefully they would be at the same time trying to help you.
Right. 100%.
That would be
right. But what I'm saying is like, it's going to take some of your time and energy, effort, money. Right. And so like, I'll get to a plateau there. And then kids, right? Same thing. Now you have like, you're running a business and you have a wife. Now you have kids. Now it's like, okay, now there's more energy and time. And so I think each one of those is going to take a chunk of, work and effort, money. And so I think it's going to take a while to kind of be able to take care of all those things.
Yeah.
And they happen in segments. Like there's no reason for me right now, in my opinion, there's no reason for me right now to take care of my community. And I'm not saying I'm disregarding it, right? But like, I want to have these other things before I want to start taking care of my community. And so I think about it in a hierarchical sense of like, take care of this thing first, then this other thing next, then this other thing next. And I'm not trying to be like crazy rigid about that, but it's kind of how I think about them.
Yeah, see, because I would also say, like, my pushback to that would be there's no reason for you not to be taking care of yourself. And I'm mostly talking about the first thing because you said your physical and emotional, spiritual health, like right now.
Mm-hmm.
And if that like isn't prioritized now, like I don't think it's something you can like borrow now and then pay back later. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. And
Because,
I guess like one of the things that I've been guilty of, and I, and this is why I made this like little chart recently, and it'll always be a draft, I guess, is
you gotta
I've
publish
put,
that thing, man.
I'm thinking about it
No,
actually.
I'm teasing
It's
you.
funny because I'm actually thinking about like when I'm kind of like almost done with it or feel like it's in a good spot, I plan to. But I've put my career in front of myself for a long time, for a really long time. It was like career. Yeah, I'm trying to think like which order it probably was in. It was probably like career, then myself, then friends and then family, then friends, and somewhere there was like partner in there between family, then partner, or family, then friends. And so like I had my career in front of I had my career in front of my family. I had career in front of myself. I had career in front of my partner. And I think I was wrong about that. And I say wrong about that. I'm at a place now where I can say that. But at the time, my career was really, really important to me. And I had to like learn that, I guess.
It's normal in our society, though. Like anytime you ask somebody, "Hey, can you do this or that?" They say, "I have to work."
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying that's wrong, but I don't know that it's right either. But it's normal.
Yeah, and I guess I'm in a fortunate place to be able to have that breathing room I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Right, where before it was like Luke was talking about it when we were on the podcast about like when he was working for the excavation company, his boss would call him and he'd be like, "Hey, you're going to Great Falls tomorrow. And like you're going to be gone for 3 weeks." It's kind of like how my life was for a long time. It was like I didn't have any leverage on my career or I didn't have any leverage on my career at the time, and so like I couldn't say no.
Yeah.
Because I needed the job, I needed the money. I also needed the experience. And so, I didn't work out of town a whole lot, luckily in my career, but I did work out of town for a while, and that's just one example, right? Like there's times when it was I had to be at the job at 3 a.m, because of something, right? Some sequencing thing where it was like the only time we can get the painter into the elevator shaft is from 3 a.m. to 7 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you have to say no to all these other things for a while until you can get some leverage on the world. And then you can say no to a bunch of other things.
Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of normal to some extent, though. I mean, there's no way you'll never kind of get ahead. You'll just be in a position where either won't have any money and you'll have no leverage, or you'll just have no money and no leverage for your whole life if you say no to all these situations. Except, I don't know.
Well, and I think that's a whole other conversation of like, I think there's people that are stuck, in their career, and it's not because they're actually stuck. It's because they're afraid to pull the lever.
Yeah.
Right. It's like they have the leverage and they won't pull it because it's a psychological thing of like, well, if I quit this company, like, well, yeah, you could quit that company and go make $50,000 more.
Mm-hmm.
That's like pulling the leverage card. And that $50,000 can get you to somewhere else. And that's a big jump, $50,000, but it could be 10 grand, right? And
Mm-hmm.
10 grand can give you some of that breathing room, and then 10 more grand can give you a little more breathing room. But you have to pull the leverage. You have to pull the lever when the time is somewhat right. It's not always going to be perfect. But if you don't pull it, then you're going to stay exactly where you are and you won't get any breathing room.
Well, isn't it interesting? Luke at 22 quit that job and took a less paying job because he had the realization that, oh, this isn't worth it.
Yeah. And there's different types of leverage.
Yeah.
Right. There's financial leverage, and then there's time, freedom.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of different leverage, but you have to choose which one you want when you want it and do it.
Yeah. Yeah. And you don't get the time back, so that's interesting too. Or worth thinking about.
Yeah, I mean, Luke's 22, right? Yeah, he's worked a lot for a 22-year-old. He's already had I didn't really start work full time until I was 24. And so he's learned a few things already. It's good.
I worked like the most I've ever worked from 18 to 25.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah,
I don't do much better now, but I just have much more say and control and leverage than I did then.
Right.
Anyway, that's about all the questions I've got because I had a bunch more, but we wove so many in and answered so many. You got anything else you want to talk about? You got anything else to say for yourself?
No, I don't.
All right. We'll do this again.
Wrap it up.
Another 30. Thanks, dude.
Yeah, thanks.